And I am ready for Lauri Markkanen to sign a new contract with the Utah Jazz. He is eligible today. It is August 6th. And again, I will continue to tell you to have patience because I don't believe that Lauri Markkanen signs this deal today. I don't think there is any hurry because it has been an interesting week of revelations on this deal. The Jazz have an absurd asking price for Lauri Markkanen. We've talked about it, whether it is, Johnson and Vassell, a starting price at Golden State that is Pajemski or nothing. Their asking price for Lauri Markkanen is outrageous. And I think the other part of this quotient that has come into light so much, and again, Tony Jones at The Athletic had it first in talking to people around the situation. I think Lauri Markkanen is tired of being traded. I think his family is tired of being traded. I think he does not want to uproot his family again and play this game where he's got to go in, find a way to get comfortable in a new market, whether that is San Antonio or San Francisco. And I simply believe that Lauri Markkanen does not want to be traded. Would he accept a trade? I'm sure he would. But here are the complexities of that deal. A lot of people don't understand the contract situations. I did 3 national interviews yesterday talking about this. And on a national network that I am not going to name or call people out on a national network yesterday, a host who is known for his NBA coverage had no idea that Lauri Markkanen wasn't going to be paid $18 million this coming season. And I just asked myself, how is it possible that people have so little understanding of Lauri Markkanen's contract situation? He is on an expiring deal for $18 million. That's absolutely the truth. He is going to make, in my opinion, between 35 at a minimum and 42 at a maximum from the Utah Jazz this year. And I'm telling you, that's very difficult for Golden State to even have the conversation on. So I think it is likely that we were completely wrong about the percentages or the likelihood of a Lauri Markkanen deal. I am sitting here today at 20%. When I was at 60%, I feel like I was completely wrong. I don't know that the Jazz were ever going to trade Lauri Markkanen unless they got blown away. And Jake, I think it's absolutely ridiculous because if you keep Lauri Markkanen, I think you are absolutely a rudderless ship.
Yeah, I think that, Markkanen's a great player. This isn't a conversation as far as the Jazz are concerned around Markkanen's ability or like his fit on the team. It's much more to me a conversation of where the Jazz are going. And I don't think the Jazz know where they're going. I don't think that there's a game plan. I don't think that the Jazz are like, yeah, we're looking to compete, for a championship in 26, 27 or 28, 29. I think the Jazz are tasked with, hey, don't spend money and keep people in the building. That's what I think the task is. I think the task is, hey, we need to conserve money. We need to up the profit margin a little bit for the next couple of seasons because we've done some things here, and that's what is going to take place. And that's why, again, just in my opinion, I you're not going to see the Markkanen sign his deal today because obviously, like he just said, Markkanen's tired of being traded. So if you sign it tomorrow, you can't be traded this year due to the CBA policies. So he'll probably sign it tomorrow. And I would guess it's going to be to the upper 30s. I would be surprised if the Jazz signed him for more than 40, considering that you're an organization not really trying to spend a lot of money right now. So if it's more than 40, I'd be a little surprised. But ultimately, the bigger issue and the bigger talking point with this organization right now is the direction you're going. If you sign Markkanen to, again, let's say that Markkanen signs a big deal. Let's say that he signs a 4-year deal somehow and goes ham, and somehow this goes sideways. If you were to sign him to a longer term deal at, let's say 38 a year over the course, your average annual value is like 38 a year. I think that's a mistake. I think that he's probably not going to be here when you're actually ready to start competing for championships. And And that's where I say to Lauri Markkanen, you very well may be burned out on being traded. But are you more tired of being traded than you are wanting to win a championship? Because you're in your prime. Like, understand your position. Like, this is the Brandon Ayuk thing. Understand who you are, understand how much money you should be making, and understand what it's going to take for you to go out and compete for a championship as a player.
And interestingly, I did an interview in Chicago on Monday, and which was yesterday, because today is only Tuesday. Talking about how Lauri Markkanen has changed from his time with the Bulls to his time with Cleveland to now his time with the Jazz. And the answer is, I don't think he's changed that much. The statistics and the performance on the court, certainly, but he is the featured guy. He is the best player on this team. It's not in question. He was, in my opinion, in a bad system in Cleveland, and I think he was miscast as a young player in Chicago. I think he is in his prime now. I think this is as good as we are going to see from Lauri Markkanen. And I think if the Jazz pay him, they are a rudderless ship. Because you have this situation where the Jazz are under the minimum. And what that means is each team has to spend a minimum amount of money. Currently, the Jazz are under that minimum. The Lauri Markkanen contract will bring them up to that number. Depending on what it is, it'll bring them to that number at a minimum. It'll bring them to that number. And the reason that's so significant is because the biggest part is you then are getting your distribution of luxury tax money. Because what the NBA does is they make teams that go over a certain limit pay the luxury tax. That money is evenly distributed amongst the clubs. So if you are under the minimum, you don't get that money. And if let's say you're 10 million under the minimum, or probably more like 5 million, you have to take that 5 million and pay it to the league at the end of the year. And it is distributed to the other clubs. And if you are under that minimum, and this is something I think a lot of people don't understand, if you are under that minimum, the day that training camp opens, you have to pay that amount at the end of the year. It does not matter what you do during the season. At the beginning of training camp, you have to be at or above that minimum salary number. They need the Markkanen contract to do that. And if you're paying him, let's call it 40 million even. If you're paying him 40 million and you do that beyond today, he's going to be on your roster all season long. And the question is, are you trying to get Cooper Flagg? Or are you trying to be a rudderless ship that's not good, that's not the worst, that just winds up 5-6 games out of a playoff spot? Because that's no man's land. That quite literally is zero direction.
But what also is it? It's also profitability. And I hate to say that, but it is profitability. You're spending basically the least amount of money you're able to spend on your roster, right? By signing Markkanen. Because what does signing Markkanen do? Like you just said, it gets you past the minimum. So you don't, you're not paying any type of fee or fine or anything to the league. And then also from a fan base making money, perspective, it puts butts in seats. And that's what this town does. That's what Salt Lake City does.
Yeah, I think Ryan Smith, the owner of the Jazz, is worried about his public perception. I think he does not want to be seen as a guy who's doing anything less than the minimum to win games. And I think you look at where the Jazz are now, and again, nobody in this town is going to question Ryan Smith. Nobody's got the courage to do that. Nobody is going to call him out for the fact that signing Lauri Markkanen to a massive contract, and at $40 million, it's a massive contract. Signing Lauri Markkanen to that kind of number where you are right now is a mistake. Having Jordan Clarkson on this team still to this day is a mistake. Having John Collins on this roster right now is a mistake. Why are you not trading those guys? You were never, and I think this goes to this point on public perception. You were never getting Paul George. You were never, in my opinion, getting Bridges. You were never even close. You were not even in the conversation.
Right.
They've made the baseline minimum effort. They've done things just so they can say they've done things. And if you wind up with Lauri Markkanen on this team, stop telling me you're trying to win championships, because you're not. Stop telling me that you're doing everything you can do to be competitive, because you're not. If you keep him on this team, you are either not going to play him, 40 games? We're going to have phantom injuries, or because you've got to play this young core. You've got to figure out what Hendricks is.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to figure out, again, Danny Ainge kind of tipped his hand, but Keontae George isn't a number one guard. What is Kyle Filipowski? I don't know. He needs a chance to make or break. Like, you've got to play the young guys here. You've got to. Walker Kessler has to be your starting center for 82 games a year. Period. He's got to be that guy. But if you're playing John Collins, can you play Markkanen, Collins, and Kessler on the floor together? You've never found a way to do that. And you've had a whole season to do it, and you weren't able to do it.
Yeah, I don't know that the X's and O's are there to support it. Like, you would need a certain roster build to handle that. With point guard play and two guard play to kind of work that. And I just don't think that that's where you're at. And the other thing that I look at with this Markkanen situation is how you're using him on the floor. Because
I would agree.
Because you can't tell me that. The folks who were trying to trade for Markkanen, the Spurs, the Warriors, the Kings at one point early in the process, you can't tell me that these teams aren't looking at the game tape and saying, okay, Markkanen's definitely getting more touches in Utah than he would get on our team. So when he comes to our team, his nightly numbers are probably going to go down, 10%, 12%. But how do we get the explosive play out of Markkanen? How do we, because he's going to still go up against, like with the Warriors, he'd be going up against a second or third defender, I think, because you've still got Steph to worry about. You still got guys on that team to worry about if Kuminga pans out. So the point is that I'm not even sure that keeping Markkanen on your team just to get past the minimum salary threshold even helps you down the line with trading him, because teams are not stupid. They can see how that translates. So if you don't play him this year, if you play him, 50 games, if you come up with nights off constantly, how does that impact, how teams view him and how teams view you, frankly, as an organization? Because we talked about how teams were frustrated with Danny Ainge, how Danny's price is so high.
Multiple seasons in a row holding the NBA free agent trade market hostage.
Now, is that Danny Ainge doing that, or is that Ryan Smith telling Danny Ainge to do that? Because that's what I still...
No, that's Danny doing that. That's Danny Ainge wanting to do... This is them walking right up to the trade Lauri Markkanen line and not doing it. And I think people are tired of the game. And this, again, I'll just continue. There's no win here for the Jazz, because whether you want to believe it or not, they're having conversations about trading Lauri Markkanen across the NBA, and they're not executing. You're saying, oh yeah, send me your highest best offer, and you're never getting back to people. And it's one of those things where, what's the upside? Do teams respect Danny Ainge? Yes. Do teams particularly want to do business with Danny Ainge? No, they don't. Because it's a long, drawn-out, painful process. And you can go and get Paul George, and you can go and get Mikal Bridges.
Yeah.
You can go and get guys. And I think there's a lot of teams that are frustrated with Danny Ainge to the point where they're not going to leverage themselves to make a deal with him. And I agree with it. You can only pull this garbage after so many off seasons before it begins to do real damage to you.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if Danny Ainge ever builds a winner for the Jazz. If he's ever given all the tools and the ability to go and do what he wants to do and needs to do to build a championship contender here.
The money.
I don't think he will. I think they're so underwater because they brought the NHL franchise here. And the financial investment that takes. And then you've got to spend hundreds of millions of dollars more to just contend for a championship. And you have to pay the luxury tax to contend for a championship. I don't see them doing that. because they don't and have not to this point drafted well with Danny Ainge and before Danny Ainge. They haven't developed well before Danny Ainge and with Danny Ainge. And I'm asking again, Jazz fans, because Jazz fans are routinely tell me I have no sources and I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, tell me then, who have they drafted and developed into a stud? You can make the argument you developed Donovan Mitchell to a point. He has become a much, much better defender in Cleveland, and he's become a driving kick player in the mid-range. Never did that in Utah. Okay, Rudy Gobert. You developed Rudy Gobert into one of the best defensive players in the NBA. And again, I want to couch that by saying one of the best rim protectors in the NBA. But you never got anything from him offensively. Never. We always saw the offseason jump shot that never materialized.
Yeah.
And now what are we seeing? They're actually back to the basket, doing back to the basket stuff in Minnesota, becoming a much better free throw shooter in Minnesota. So did you get those guys to a certain point? You did. But you didn't win. And again, I'm just asking, where's the Dante Exum? Where's the Rodney Hood? Where's the Trey Lyles? Where is
Ochai Agbaji?
Where is Taylor Hendricks? Where is Keontae George? Where are your young guys that you've drafted, turned into a franchise player? That does not exist in certainly not under Ryan Smith. And certainly, I mean, I guess you could go back to D Faves and Gordon. Those were franchise players. But who else? Where like, it just doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. And we can go long down the list. It just doesn't exist. My point is, you've got to find a way to change who you are as a franchise. And until Ryan Smith is done investing in the NHL, I don't see that happening. And I would love to, because this is a much better town when the Jazz are good.
Yeah, it is.
Much better town. But to me, I think Ryan Smith has to earn the respect of NBA fans instead of them just blindly being like, man, you're the best. Because that's what we're getting right now.
Well, and you saw how invested the market was when they were playoff good, and there was like, because what this organization is really good at, and I'm not even being snarky, I'm being serious here. What they're really good at is telling a story throughout the season to get people's buy-in. So, hey, we're trying to get in the play-in last year. Hey, we're pushing the play-in.
We're big game hunting.
We're big game hunting, right? Like it's draft night. We're really going to change the course of our organization here. Like they push those narratives, but it doesn't necessarily pan. And
no, it does not.
If Ryan Smith is in fact worried about his perception in terms of like stripping the team down and saving money, then I don't know. Again, I know maybe it's a novel concept, but spend a little bit of money. Like, I'm not even saying that you got to be a luxury tax team,
because you don't.
Like, go out and like, I don't know, spend, bring in, make some trades, bring in a couple of guys that can play with Markkanen, so your starting five is at least good enough to make the game close while they're playing. Like, at least do that. That way, you're going to have more people in the building. You're going to have, more excitement around the team.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, man. It just, look, I'm not going to sit here and claim to know how Ryan Smith wants to do business or how, he views this situation. I respect Ryan Smith. I appreciate his ability to build a business, but honestly, I'm not convinced that this guy knows how to build a winner, or even right now wants to build a winner. I think what Ryan wants to do is to be the biggest name in town and to just, run the day to day. I think he loves analytics and data and trying to build a business.
Yeah.
I don't think that analytics and data and trying to build a business translates to the NBA salary situation and how to actually go out and get players and build a winner.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what they do, because you're probably going to have to renounce Talon Horton-Tucker's $16 million, I would assume. It'll just be really interesting to see. Okay, you're going to have $10 million in cap space after you sign Lauri Markkanen to an extension, which I think is going to happen.
Right.
You're going to have $10 million. All right, go get me some big game, dude. Because right now your highest paid player is John Collins at 25 million, 26 million, excuse me. And I think that's a guy that you could likely trade before the deadline. And if you wind up trading Collins, Sexton, I don't know what you're doing with Jordan Clarkson.
I don't know either. Like that's even now. Like,
Every time I talk about the Jazz on a show, somebody says, "What are they doing with Jordan Clarkson?"
God, I have no idea.
Don't know. Huge mistake.
Like, because he's not the face of the organization anymore. This is Markkanen's organization.
Huge mistake. Huge mistake. Cody Williams, bust or baller?
Baller, but in another organization. He won't develop. They won't develop his jumper here.
That's going to be the big question. Does he ever shoot the three well? Main event, is the extension going to be only 1 year? No. Why would you sign a 1 year extension? I mean, he's eligible for close to a $200 million deal.
Well, because I think a lot of people thought like, hey, they're going to bump him for 1 year up past 35 million so he becomes eligible and then sign him to a new deal.
They will renegotiate his salary for the upcoming season because, as Jake just said, it's the only way to pay him the maximum value. It raises his maximum total value, and you will sign him to an extension. And I don't know that it makes him more tradable. Nobody's more tradable than $18 million expiring contract for a guy that should be making 40, 50 million. Like, based on his numbers the last 2 years. Yeah. So it's not going to be a 1 year extension. Brandon Butler, the issue is there has to be those players available. I am not taking Levine or Ingram, which are the biggest game out there. I think Brandon Ingram, as we've talked about on the show, is just not, I mean, he's not an option for the Jazz.
Yeah, but I also think that the Jazz weren't interested in those two guys. There were other guys available, man. Like, if you wanted to, you could have taken a run at Bridges, but you didn't take an honest run at him. You didn't take, I agree,
Yeah,
Paul George. Paul George was never coming to Salt Lake. That's just not a fit. Paul's not that guy. Like, that wouldn't have worked for them.
And you have to trade for somebody because you, at this point, why would Paul George, for any amount of money, take the Jazz over the Clippers?
Well, you wouldn't.
The Jazz over the Sixers. The Jazz over any contender who offered him money, the Lakers.
Especially for a guy who's not won a championship yet.
Why would you do that? You're not going to do that. And I think that you look at somebody like Lauri Markkanen. Lauri Markkanen doesn't want to be traded. He's been traded. Wasn't he traded twice in 18 months? Like, he was traded a lot. And that's a lot for a family with kids to go through. So I hear him on that. And this is a great place to live, by the way. But I think guys like Brandon Ingram's going to play half a season. He's going to cost you significant money. And he's ultimately not going to make you a better team.
Right.
It just isn't. And I think when you look at Zach LaVine's the same thing. Zach LaVine thinks he's one of the best players in the NBA, and he's not. And he can't stay healthy. And the biggest issue is he's got a knee injury. That's his biggest issue, is the injury is he's got a knee injury for a guy that plays above the rim. Yeah, I'm not interested in that. And he's not popular amongst his teammates. I mean, the guy demanded a trade, a story, by the way, that yours truly broke, and everybody has run with.
Well, and I feel like that kind of graduated to like the trade thing. You reported that. Then I feel like a week later, it started coming out that his teammates
didn't like him.
And I feel like once that came out, that was kind of the final nail in the LaVine coffin, because I agree, he's one of the best players for his age in the league when he's healthy, but he's never healthy, and you can't rely on him, and you're not going to make an investment in somebody who plays 40 games a year.
Yep. Severe. So the Utah Jazz are full of sales bros. They're an excellent salesman, but man, I'm not buying that. They're visually marketing. They're terrible.
Yeah.
They don't make videos well. They don't make uniforms well.
Yeah.
They know how to sell tickets. That's an organization that knows how to sell tickets. So, we'll see. UW fan Jim, we need Okie Light James to get these guys off topic. Speaking of which, that's Kyle Filipowski, and his girlfriend is a 10.
No, his girlfriend's like a 35 and he's like a 20.
I still love that fans are like, oh, now what do you mean? That's not a problem. Okay. That's cool. I mean, the Kyle Filipowski girlfriend thing is always going to be weird.
And listen, he had a nice little run in summer league. You know, he had a nice little run in summer
he did.
league.
As a basketball asset, I think Kyle Filipowski is going to be a good player.
Yeah, he's valuable.
He's going to be a good player because he can shoot it and he likes to rebound. And you know, he's somebody that can get up and down. No, James, you do this every time. No, I did not miss your paid comment. Where am I going to read your paid comment that says, got my bucked up, headed to work, hoping somehow Lauri ends up as a Maverick. I never thought we would get Clay. There's always hope. I haven't had a chance to fit that in yet. In yet. You're so high maintenance sometimes. Lauri will not end up as a Maverick. They don't have the cap to sign him.
Yeah.
They don't have the space. They don't have a salary. And again, I think, James, you've always had an unhealthy affection for Klay Thompson. Like, you think he's prime Warriors Klay Thompson. He's not that guy anymore. He is not that guy anymore.
Yeah, he's got to prove that he can still be.
He's got to prove that he can still defend.
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't defend, he becomes measurably less valuable.
Yeah.
If he does not defend.